Coroner's report has just been released in the death of Assembly member and local resident Brian Estendi, former Assembly member, I should say. And Karen has been digging through the report and has more on the surprising cause of death in this case. Karen.
Well, John, this information first reported by Cindy Yukin in the Yukin Report. The report by the Riverside County Coroner's Office shows the cause of his death on March 6th was multiple substance intoxication, which included fentanyl and cocaine. This is a picture of the report. The autopsy also identified an enlarged heart with significant narrowing of his coronary arteries and changes in his kidneys consistent with high blood pressure that may have contributed to his death. The report also lists Coachella Mayor Stephen Hernandez is the person who found Estendi's body at his Palm Desert home. Now, Hernandez issued a statement that reads in part, quote, "I was raised in a family that looks after one another. Having worked so closely with him over the years, Brian became like a brother. I was worried and would go looking for him again in a heartbeat. Brian was a great man. He is missed, and his impact on me and on the community lives on. His selfless service to our region must be remembered," end quote. We're also hearing tonight from former Congresswoman Mary Bono, who was acquainted with Nestandi and his family and currently heads up the nonprofit Mothers Against Prescription Drug Abuse, or MAPTA. Quote, "I am saddened by Brian's death, but I will always remember him for his love of his family above all else and his desire to serve his community," end quote. Again, we received a copy of the coroner's report late this afternoon. We are still reading through it. We'll have updates throughout the evening right here on News Channel 3. John.
There's that funky live guitar music that comes in every Monday through Friday, live at 5 and Newswire and the Evil FB Network and Rumble. Check us out, subscribe, type at Newswire on Rumble. We'll get to that Brian Nestandi story, longtime, again, Politico, who passed away unexpectedly about 3 weeks ago. Now we have the reason why. Dead of a fentanyl and cocaine overdose. He was 60 years old. Again, we'll get to that. AB 955, we're not going to tell the parents your kid is getting hormone blockers. Janie is asking to be named at school as Johnny, a name he was not given by his parents, or actually legally, or now maybe quasi-legally, of that is out of the Assembly in the Senate of the state of California. Holy cow. Of that, this stuff is, if you ever thought the state could get any nuttier, well, it sure as hell is. Gavin Newsom's feeling a lot of heat from teachers, tiny homes, and just about everything else on the docket. Not that we are going to shed a tear for good old Gulag Gavin Newsom on that. Susan Shelley should be on a little after 5:30. When we join the Mighty Met KMET. Of course, we're irritating the YouTube network today, along with our usual FB and, as you know it, Rumble. Check us out, subscribe, type NIE Newswire on Rumble. What an astonishing turn of events. When we first heard that Brian Nestandi story that came out 3 weeks ago, that he had unexpectedly passed away at 60 years old, brought back a lot of memories because in part of his assembly term, he did represent Moreno Valley on the queue, but we look, his brother Barry was inside politics guy too. The whole family was. His dad Bruce was Orange County supervisor and assemblyman also. Barry was deeply involved in running campaigns and working for politicos, as was Brian. They came out of Orange County. That's where their dad Bruce was, obviously, as a supervisor there. They moved out to the desert sometime, 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and started becoming very involved in Riverside County politics. Nestande was chief of staff of, I believe, Sonny or Mary, both Bonos, one of the Bonos in there. Michael Huffington, when he was assemblyman, and we all know how that worked out. Very involved politically. His brother Barry, about 15 years ago, died unexpectedly at a very young age. Well, even I think he was in his 40s when he passed away, and that was all kind of like a big shock, and nobody really said what was going on. A couple of interesting things about this case as we peruse through it. His wife, Gina, was elected as a Palm Desert city councilwoman in 2016. She had 4 or 5 kids before they married. They had 2 together. And obviously, she was involved very much in the political scene out there. But it was reported that Hernandez, the chief of staff of now County Supervisor Manuel Perez, was the one who found him. And it goes on quoting in the article that Hernandez and some others had lunch with Brian Nestande 3 days earlier, the last time they saw him, and nobody had been in contact with him. And it was reported in various reports. You can report, I think, in the Press Enterprise, Desert Sun, Channel 3 News, that Hernandez found him. Nobody had heard from him. Kind of strange. Stephen Hernandez, and he's mayor of Coachella. He was the first person who found Nestande's body. Now, I don't know the circumstances or why, or if his wife, Gina, and councilwoman over in Palm Desert was not in contact with him or not. That's kind of unclear, but it does raise some interesting questions of that. Quoting from the Channel 3 News report, Dr. Scott Luzzi, who performed the autopsy, wrote in a report, Nestande died of multiple substance intoxication. After the toxicology report identified a designer form of fentanyl and a cocaine metabolite in his blood. Hernandez told investigators that Nestande was last seen alive 3 days prior when they met for breakfast and other friends. He reported that Nestande acted normal and had not had any complaints. Well, even if his wife was out of town, Well, I guess if she was out of town, she wouldn't see him, but was she in contact with him? Hernandez went on to check on Estende after he and his friends noted that they hadn't heard from him in a few days. Of course, it mentions his assemblyman. He was assemblyman out here in Coachella Valley. I think that 08 to 12, he was a representative. I think his last one when he was redistricting, or it might have been the whole term. He was in when Moreno Valley was split in like 4 or 5 different assembly districts back then. And he did have part of California, or I mean part of, well, all of California, part of Moreno Valley in his jurisdiction, but mainly it was the Coachella Valley. John Benoit, the late John Benoit, who was a county supervisor and assemblyman, was the one before him, or preceded him. And man, it was just that the one thing, and it was in the Desert Sun report, but I didn't see it in the Channel 3 report or others. He was the deputy chief executive officer of Riverside County until 2021, which means he was the number 2 executive behind guys like, well, I don't think Van Wagelen was there. It might have been Orr when that was. But he was, again, had some very high-powered jobs. Assembly member, deputy CEO of Riverside County. And I will say, again, that he was found dead at 60. Coroner of Riverside County is reporting that he died of cocaine and fentanyl. I will remind our current county supervisors, just as a caution, when we out there in the peanut gallery are questioning what's going on a lot of things, and you're telling us how great your employees are and they do a fantastic job, and there probably is a lot of merit to that. But let me just say you have quite a few, in my opinion, people in or were in your employ, or a lot of your trusted associates, like your chiefs of staff, are having breakfast and very close contact with very influential people that have your ear and you prop up on a pedestal all the time. They may not warrant all the accolades and praise you give them. And I'm trying to be kind again. The whole circumstances surrounding this raise a lot of questions. You know, anybody can, at 60 years old, which he was, well, you know, things can happen. I mean, you know, it's like not common, but it's not unexpected if somebody dies of a health problem, you know, as a major heart attack or something, contracts cancer, debilitating disease or something. But again, the rich and the powerful in this area, again, and we're told and we're castigated and we do, and we'll get in, maybe we'll run a few more clips before the next meeting since they had this week off at Riverside County. it raises a lot of questions of who you're electing, hiring, listening to, having inordinate shaping of public policy, which affects 2.5 million residents in this county. Here's the Desert Sun article, the main paper down there. Standy was found dead at his home in Palm Desert on March 6. He represented Coachella Valley, served as deputy CEO of Riverside County until May of 2021. The report also listed significant conditions contributing to death as hypertensionism and cardiovascular disease. Well, if you're 60, that's, and especially if you have a family history, that's not necessarily uncommon. It was unusual because his dad, lived to 82. Again, his brother died, I think, in his 40s. But he didn't, and that was kind of unusual, he didn't get a seat. Well, he was trying to run for college board out there in College of the Desert, but it was ruled he was not in the proper trustee area in 2022. And of course, Manny Perez and Nestande they served along with, I believe, Kevin Jeffries in the assembly of that. So, I mean, those guys did have a relationship, but the establishment, as I call them, a lot of people call them the Uniparty, the power brokers, whether they be worldwide, nationally, or in our local towns and communities, it's a very tight group. And in my opinion, they don't have yours or my interest, in most cases, best interests at heart. Most of them are about themselves and their little clique of friends and colleagues that seem to benefit a whole bunch off of this stuff. Hopefully more people will wake up in 2024 or pay attention or take more of an interest in what's going on. But we do definitely have some trouble, as they say, in River City in a lot of these instances. Before we get to the AB 1955 deal, Gavin Newsom made this big promise that he was going to build 1,200 tiny homes. Going to have them up and running at record lightning speed, like the bullet train. That 20 years later, nothing done, tens of hundreds of billions of dollars squandered down the rat hole. To the homeless crisis, $24 billion. We don't know where it's at or what it's done or if it's made any good or not. Your Riverside County Supervisor, well, Chuck Washington. Oh, we're the greatest over in Riverside County. And give me a break. Anyway, this is a News 4 report. up there in the Bay Area. Here we go.
Guys, north of Reno, after 60 years, the national championship air races, they are.
Wrong one. Thought I had the tiny homes one. This is real. We'll get to that one in a second because that kind of relates of that. But I think it's over here. I'm on the wrong end of the stick. Well, I thought I was. Anyway, the tiny homes, yes, I found the right one. Of course, they're going to play an ad. But he promised 1,200 tiny homes. None of them have welcomed a single resident. 1,200 tiny homes. They can't build tiny homes, but we think they can build big homes? Well, let's see.
Including here in Sacramento. Today, not one of those cabins is up and running. Becca Hubegger explains.
You want to see progress, and you want to see it now.
In March of 2023, Governor Gavin Newsom announced a plan to give 4 cities sleeping cabins totaling 1,200 beds, 500 to Los Angeles, 200 to San Jose, 150 to San Diego County, and 350 to Sacramento. But more than a year later, not a single one is even installed, let alone providing transitional housing to the homeless population they're meant to serve. That's according to an investigation by the nonpartisan nonprofit news organization Cal Matters.
It's, again, a matter of the delivery of the homes from the various manufacturers.
That's Darrell Steinberg, was former head of the Senate in California, mayor of Sacramento, which is another hellhole. They've turned, once great city of Sacramento, they've turned into that. Not one. They can't build tiny homes. They build 200 square foot bungalows, hovels, and charge us upwards of $1 million a unit. What, $2,000 a square foot? Or $5,000 a square foot? You know, your average home now costs about $300, single family home. They're charging us 10, 15. Next, it'll be 20 times more than it costs to build a most expensive homes practically in the world in California. More from the ABC 10 report of the Bay Area.
Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg back in October announcing 175 of Sacramento's allotted 350 beds would be installed on this site at 6810 Stockton Boulevard.
Look at this old property and look at what it is going to become.
In March of this year, the state broke ground at this site. Here's how it looks today. It will become an emergency shelter and service campus.
It will become...
Governor Gavin Newsom made more than a year ago. That hasn't yet come to fruition.
As it will, just like the bullet train and everything else these Klondikes do. Or practically. If we get charged 3 times as much for half the service, we're getting a deal in most cases. How we can go from the land of opportunity to not is absolutely stunning. Ashley Zavala's just put out a tweet. California Assembly, McGuire and Rivas and Senate have reached a tentative agreement on a budget for the state of California. We'll see how that rolls out. this is just breaking. Or we see. We'll see if we get any decent decisions, honest information. You know they're going to 1,000% in the next 3 or 4 months just run us over ridiculously. Want to get to that Reno Air Races story. Last year was the last, and that's like the Indy 500, Daytona 500, Streets of Monaco of the air races. That was the last year. They finally announced that they're going to Roswell, New Mexico for this year's air races. But it's not going to be a big surprise as one of the reasons why. A lot of it, because, let me just say, airplane racing, probably one of the most dangerous activities you can take part in. Those guys, per mile flown, they get killed at a rate that is something else. Here's the NBC News report that we started on of that on the leaving of the Reno Air Races. Here we go.
Are leaving the area.
So what does that mean for our economy and what's being done to fill that big void? Kim Burrows has those answers in her On Your Side report.
Businesses boom during the air races.
During the event, very busy. There won't be an empty seat in the place.
Matt Everett's place instead, the Pylon Bar and Grill, pays homage to the air races.
And it's, a local tie-in with something that's literally 2 blocks from here.
The name will stay after the event leaves, but not all the customers will stick around, like these 2 pilots from Arizona.
I'm just trying to take it all in. It's the last year for it, and it's just, I'm trying to soak it all up. Everybody's sad to see this go. There's nowhere else on the planet that you can go and go wide open at 50 feet off the ground, and it's like NASCAR in the air.
Hundreds of pilots.
We're a part of what makes this community what it is.
Thousands of spectators.
And we've put it on the map in the aviation world.
All spending money at our local businesses. And it's not just the small businesses instead affected. In the last economic survey done in 2019 by UNR, it found that the air races had a $100 million economic impact in Reno and the surrounding areas.
$100 million impact going out the weeds in Reno. Can you guess one of the big reasons why? It's coming up here in 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
Hotels, retail stores, and restaurants all see a spike in business during the air races, and all will feel the loss of such a significant event. We asked the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority interim president what's being done to fill the air races void.
We're very confident that either through a Reno Air Show that they're possibly bringing back next year, or other events that we're consistently always looking for.
RSCVA says the great September weather draws people to the Reno area. It's consistently in the top 5 room-producing months. But money is always a great incentive.
Since 2008, we've contributed over $1.6 million to support the air races.
So that money can now be used for some other event to draw them in.
Correct, absolutely.
To replace something as significant as the air races will be difficult from an economic standpoint.
Big events like this that bring people in from all over are hard to come by. So why do you don't want to lose them?
Kim Burrows reporting.
And the National Championship Air Races event is leaving due to concerns about rapid area development, safety concerns, and the impact on the Reno-Stead Air.
Safety concerns. Reno, the latest city, going down the tubes with vagrancy, unsafe conditions, people don't want to go out. In a entertainment town where they depend on you or the tourists to come in. and they don't feel safe. This is like San Francisco and everything else that has went on. They pulled out in a major reason of the Reno air races because Reno, Nevada is becoming unsafe. If that doesn't grab major people's attention, I don't know what will. AB 1955 is passed out of the California Assembly, is headed into the Senate. This is the bill Newsom, K-9 hating Corey Jackson, Chris Ward, who showed up on those tapes with the LGBTQ caucus, with the nonprofits that were getting Riverside County money up to $1 million, and possibly, maybe, is it being used for political purposes, or are churches using it for political purposes of the money that came from our public treasury? It's going to the Senate because of Sonia Shaw, the great president of Chino Valley School Board, kicked this off, saying, we're going to notify parents. Medical issues, Janie wants to be known as Johnny, whatever, parents have a right to know. She got rolled down by a ton of bricks. The Gavin Newsoms, the Corey Jacksons, Tony Thurman, that dingbat who's our superintendent of public construction statewide. And we've been battling in the courts, and we've been playing the football around, and they really had no authority. So they're going to try and quantify this in the assembly, that parents cannot be notified what's going on with their kids. Bill O'Saley put this on at the hearings today. We'll see if she plays.
File item 1, AB 1955, Ward. Motion is due pass to the Senate Health Committee. Newman?
Aye.
Newman, aye. Ochoa Bogue? Cortese? Cortese, aye. Glazer? Glazer, aye. Gonzalez? Gonzalez, aye. Smallwood Cuevas? Wilk?
No.
Wilk, no.
That measure now has 4 votes for, 1 against. We'll leave it open for the absent member.
So there you have it. Of course, Bo and Wilk voted against it. The Republicans, the Democrats said, oh, we're going to have this. Here's some of the witnesses that testified at the committee hearing in the Assembly today as it rolled out, or as it rolled out of the Senate, I should say, committee.
My name is Aurora Regino. Until the events involving my daughter, I was a registered Democrat. I voted for same-sex marriage. I am a plaintiff in a lawsuit that I filed against Chico Unified School District for their secret social transition of my 11-year-old daughter. In the fall of 2022, following the death of her grandfather, my daughter was depressed. I also had breast cancer, and our family was going through a difficult time. My daughter was influenced by her school to believe that her sadness was because she was really a boy. When she told a school counselor that she felt this way, the counselor did not tell me. Instead, without contacting me, the counselor and my daughter's teacher arranged for the entire school to begin using a male name that my daughter had picked out and referred to her with the male pronouns. The school cemented and encouraged this male identity for my daughter behind my back. Over that period, my daughter's depression worsened. Finally, my daughter told her grandmother, my mother, about what was going on at school. My mother told me I was horrified that the school had done this without even informing me.
Again, there's a mom who was a Democrat, probably voted very liberal, probably voted for a lot of the people in there. And that's up in Chico, not Chino. Chico is up above. You go up above Sacramento, put probably another 100 miles or so north of Sacramento. Chico is not very working class town. It's not Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, or Sacramento. They're doing this in Chico, California. If they're doing it in Chico, California, they're doing it all over the place. This stuff is as serious as a heart attack. How we've got to the point, and we're basically making kids wards of the state. The state determines what curriculum, what your kids are taught, what their medical procedures are. If your kid is 12 years old, you have no right in California to look at their medical records if you were the parent. 12. And that started over abortion. And it started over the same crap. Oh, some 14-year-old girl's going to come home pregnant, and her evil white hillbilly drunken dad's going to beat the crap out of her. That happened 1 out of 10 million cases or something. So no parent, nowhere gets any medical records after they're 12. There's more from the Senate committee hearing today on the odious Bill 1955, striking down parents from knowing anything going on with their kids unless the state allows you to hear it or see it or have it.
California. A transgender child is a child with a gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria. Under the current Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the dysphoria is characterized by a child's severe and persistent discomfort with his or
It's a medical disorder. And we'll get into this a little bit farther, hopefully when Susan Shelley comes on. But you can imagine the pain and the shock and the horror from that mom, who probably supported most of these politicians and believed what they were saying. Then reality hit her, and probably many others, square in the face. I think that's happening a lot in 2024. Reality's hitting many square in the face. Not everybody that says has your best intention at heart, as they say. They're not looking out for you. They're looking out for them. This whole thing about the transgender and the boys and the girls' bathrooms and the whole thing is meant to cause such a chaotic situation that you will tell them, I'll do anything, just make it stop. The only saving grace in this is I think they're overplaying their hand. This was in the Daily Mail. California teachers declare war on Gavin Newsom with new advert. All of a sudden, teachers who poured millions. What did they give him? $25 million on the recall alone, just to Gavin Newsom? California teachers declare war on Gavin Newsom with new advert. Really? Now they're putting out ads against him? The union representing California teachers is continuing to push an ad against Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom despite reversing a decision to cut school funding in mid-May. The ultra-progressive California ultra-progressive? Wow, we're getting better at this. The ultra-progressive California Teachers Association. So every member of the California Teachers Association that has not opted out under the Janus decision, and you are giving them your money willingly to participate in political activities. You cops and firefighters over $400 million over the last 20-some years, as a report by Tom Buckley, who we had on the show, and he's reported in the California Globe. Biggest political contributor, bar none, ultra-progressive California teachers. You are in the ultra-progressive California Teachers Association, and they represent you as an ultra-progressive group. So I don't want to hear no more excuses. Either you hold up that card, says, I have opted out, or I disagree with the California Teachers Association, then you are in. What do we got? 500,000 teachers or something like that in the state of California, K through 12. California Teachers Association announced a public campaign aimed at blocking part of his plan to balance the budget because they say it would wreak havoc on funding for our schools. California classrooms face a monumental crisis, tens of billions of dollars in cuts in public education over the next 3 years, bigger class sizes, thousands of teachers laid off, essential resources like counselors, nurses, and special education aides gone, the ad claims. That's because you teachers had such a grand old time over the COVID con, especially in California, and demanded for 2 years California schools had padlocks on them. While you were getting raises, your salaries were going up immensely, according to transparent.org. Your compensation package, average teacher prorated to a full year's worth of work like most everybody else has to do, is at $189,000 a year. Average. That means 50% make more, 50% make less. Average teacher. Scant 50 years ago, adjusted for inflation, they were making less than a third or less than $60,000. I don't want to hear crocodile tears. It's flat ridiculous. Even though Newsom came to the agreement with the union and promised to roll back the school budget cuts after initially attempting to cut $12 billion from the state budget, union president David Goldberg says that they're waiting for it to pass the state legislature. As always, we will closely monitor attempt to do Prop 98. They got over on the last budget, Prop 98. We've said it. They get 40% of the general slush fund of the state of California. Off the top, you wanted it, you got it. You were given an overage in 2023. Newsom saying, hey, that's an overage. That's not Prop 98. But see, how it works is if they get an overage over their Prop 98, then they consider that, the base for next year, even though that's not what's constitutionally mandated. And they said, we're going to sue and all this other stuff. You know what, teachers? You're so smart. You're the educators. What's 100% of zero? Just like with your pensions and everything else. You crash the system, you ain't getting diddly squat. Ask the people of Venezuela. Ask the people in Mexico. It's run by the drug cartels that run the fentanyl and cocaine and everything else. Practically all of it's coming from Mexico through the United States. I wonder where it originated, that fentanyl and cocaine that Brian Estende died from. It's running from the corrupt, probably, most likely, of the corrupt country of Mexico, which the drug lords and the cartels run that country. The cartels in the United States are the public employee unions, and especially even more so in California. And they're caterwauling and this. You answer me this question, teachers, administrators, school jockers. 10 years ago, it was $8,000 per student, K through 12 in California. Now it's $24,000, 300% increase, while student achievement has went down. You heard the report from the military saying our schools are sending us kids with 3.7 grade point averages that can't read. So you can threaten your lawsuits, cry your crocodile tears. Let's look at the freaking performance. Do you deserve this on merit? Have you produced more production since 300%, and your salaries and benefits have went through the charts in those 10 years? The biggest part of what we spend on education K through 12 in the state of California is on teacher salaries and benefits and compensation package. By far. They get more than it takes to run the school system, the guys mowing the lawn, the administrators, paying the electricity, building the new schools, and practically everything else. They are roughly over half the budget. Just the teachers, and I'm not counting all the others, the administrators, and the classified staff. When you get to that, it's about 70%, 75%, something in that range, is going to salaries to run the schools. Whatever it is, the $140 billion that makes up that $24,000 per student, 70% of that is salaries. It's not providing schools, not providing books, nothing. Zip, zada, nothing. Sometimes it's a crying shame of the stuff we do get into, but I guess we'll have to endure. But it's funny, the teachers now are turning on Gavin Newsom when he actually was saying, hey, we just want back the overage that we paid you in the last budget that you shouldn't have got. And they're just screaming. They were doing it at the school board meeting. Jesus Holguin, who's going out the door in less than a month. Oh, call the legislature, do this, and we're going to do that, without giving everyone there the full facts. This is why we have no faith in UCAS.
20 seconds, 20 seconds, 15. We're coming early, coming fast.
So you must have punished Sean enough, because now he's coming in for 2 straight days.
Here we go.
IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed.
There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday, live at 5:30 on the Mighty Met, 1490 AM, broadcasting all over the Inland Empire in the aforementioned AM band, joining our vast video audience in the evil FB network and Rumble. Check us out, subscribe, type in IE Newswire on Rumble. Man, oh man, what a day. Brian Estandi, longtime assemblyman, deputy CEO of Riverside County, passed away unexpectedly at 60 years old. We now found out why. About 3 weeks ago, we now found out why. Died of a fentanyl cocaine overdose, as has been reported in many various outlets of that. We definitely need to take a closer look all across the board, who our elected officials are, who our executive staff members are. And there's some even very, let's say, interesting, strange, I think needs to be more looked into, circumstances behind this whole issue. I don't think it's a dead issue yet. We'll start with Susan Shelley. AB 1955, the parental notification bill, coming up. It just cleared the assembly. It is now headed and out of the committee hearing in the Senate. Gavin Newsom, the teachers are turning against him. Along with his 1,200 tiny homes that never got built, that we were promised. They can't build tiny homes, but they can build. They're going to be the supplier of your domiciles if we keep going at this. But as we usually do on a Wednesday, we have the famed editorial writer columnist for the Press Enterprise, San Bernardino Sun, Inland Daily Bulletin, Redlands Daily Facts, but more important to me, Vice President of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Susan Shelley. Welcome to IE Newswire with Roy.
Joy, great to be with you.
Newsom's having a bad week. The whole tiny homes thing that broke out of that, teachers now are running ads against him. The same teachers, what they give him, 20 or 25 million just in the recall campaign? Some ridiculous amount.
Enough to own him for sure.
Yes. And now they're turning against him because he wants to take back, or he proposed taking back, the overage they got over Prop 98. They were caterwauling about this at our Moreno Valley Unified School Board meeting last night. Call your assemblyman. Oh, the sky is falling. Newsom and this is going to do the da-da-da-da-da-da. I can't be more elated that Gavin Newsom is having even a worse week it is than Joe Biden, Susan Shelley.
Well, this was a really complicated maneuver that he was trying to do. The problem was that they did the budget last year without knowing how much revenue was really there. And they overestimated it, as they always do. They didn't know because of the delay, because of the rainstorms. We had that delay in filing last year. So he didn't know what the real numbers were going to be. So under the Prop 98 formula, the schools got $8 billion more than they should have gotten. But nobody wanted to take that back, of course. The money was out the door. So what Newsom decided to do was take it off the books, essentially, not call it education spending so they wouldn't be in violation of Prop 98, and then create some kind of multi-year borrowing from other accounts in the budget in future budget years to make it up. So the Legislative Analyst's Office said, well, this is novel. we have some concerns about this regarding transparency, and and other things. But the teachers union got upset because by not calling it education spending, it had an impact on the math for next year's budget, because apparently the Prop 98 formula builds year over year. And if you don't call that $8 billion education spending, then it doesn't count for the next year's bump up. Something along those lines, something like a cost of living adjustment or whatever that builds year after year. They were going to lose out in future budget years, and this they thought was robbery. So instead of saying, great, we get to keep the money we weren't entitled to, they're like, not only were we entitled to it and we're keeping it, but we're calling it what it is and we're building on it for next year. Well, they've now settled this disagreement. And I'm not sure exactly what they've done, but it needs legislative approval. EdSource.org is reporting that they have settled this disagreement over it. And apparently some other cuts are going to be removed, and they've made some sort of a bargain. But no one really understands Prop 98. It's tremendously complicated. And so this is how you have these disagreements.
It is. It's I find it ironic, apropos, that the teachers are running ads against Gavin Newsom on this, and it's just like, how did we get to this point? It's that you got an overage of the COVID conbucks. As I said, as you teachers had your legs propped up on the desk for 2 years and demanded our schools stayed locked up for 2 years, the longest of any state in the union, and now that you have played a great role in this situation, the budget crisis and everything else, the whatever Tom Buckley said, for over 20 years, $250 million CTA is poured into campaign coffers. 147% of them or something going to Democrats or very left-wing nuts. And now you're caterwaulering because they want to take back something extra they gave you. And now you're getting all upset. I think they know the walls are closing in on them, but what say you, Susan?
Well, it's just amazing to me how much they whine about money when you look at the fact that enrollment is falling year after year after year, and the projected enrollment is falling year after year after year, and the spending is going up and up and up every year, and the number of administrators and various other unionized jobs, the administrators are unionized too. Everybody's unionized, and they've all got these contracts, and they're all in a huff every time a budget cut is even discussed or any kind of adjustment to these extremely rich benefits contracts that some of these unions have negotiated at the local level, enabled by Governor Gavin Newsom, who said to the local districts, well, I'm not going to tell you to reopen after COVID. You just work it out with your labor partners when you're going to reopen. Well, what did that mean? That meant raises and bumps in various other compensation. It meant some kind of a child care stipend in the Los Angeles Unified School District. They were just free to negotiate, just as if it was a contract negotiation instead of a pandemic closure. So this is how we got where we are. They're tremendously powerful politically. As you just indicated, they're well organized enough to get people out there to every school board meeting in every part of the state simultaneously. And the leverage they have over Gavin Newsom is that he wants to run for president, and they can make him look very bad. So there you go.
100%. Shifting gears before you get to your column on that, AB 1955, now they're trying to, now that they've been beating the courts a lot and parents have been getting upset about this whole parental notification deal, now they're trying to push it. Now they're trying to write new legislation saying the state basically owns your kids. And if we don't want you to know anything about your kid, we're going to be in control of it. It's passed out of the Assembly. It just passed out of the Senate committee. One of the big, let's say, misinformation campaigns they've been running of it, they come up with all these statistics. You retweeted this from the Senate committee hearing today. So here we go.
So if the parent doesn't know about this, if the parent is totally kept in the dark over what's going on, yeah, the kid is at far more risk. And oh, by the way, the kids who start doing this transition are far more likely to enter the medical parts and the surgical parts. And the only giving the devil's advocate to the folks who think this is a good idea, the only justification that was ever really brought up that said, oh, we should probably do this is to prevent suicide. And now we see that's not happening. In fact, the people who are going through this transition are more likely to commit suicide as adults. And that's the reason that the Dutch closed these and the UK closed these and nearly all of Europe has closed this.
But Doctor, that's fine. That's fine. But I think...
No, that's a huge deal.
I'm saying, I appreciate your...
Of course, since the expert witness is telling the real science, the real medical cost of this, the real world of what happens to kids and later on adults that go through this. And as they said, other countries have said, this is, we tried it. It was stupid. It didn't work. It actually made the situation worse. Now we're repeating the same mistake of that or trying to justify it. It's if you weren't watching it, you wouldn't believe it, at least in my case, Susan.
I think it's so horrifying that the California legislature has taken up this agenda that endangers children and tries to portray parents as hostile to their children. This is so frightening because they're taking it all the way down to the younger grades. And now you have children who are not in puberty yet, and they're being told you can choose whether you want to go into puberty, you can choose whether you want to be a boy or a girl. That is horrifying because what they're selling them right down the road, as you indicated, is drugs that will make them sterile for life and impair their physical performances for life. And how can they possibly consent to that at an age younger than 10? This is insane. And what is wrong with the California legislature that they are pursuing this when, as you've pointed out, all these other nations are recognizing the terrible tragedy that has come out of this policy?
It is. It's beyond stunning of that. We'll follow this one on that, but I want to get to your column this week in Southern California News Group, and you're a fabulous writer, research the subjects well and everything else, but I hesitate to look, but as you're driving by the nasty traffic accident, you have to look in that. Is the state secret plan for the tent crisis? I just know my head's going to explode after you explain this one, Susan.
Well, this is a satire column. Let me be a spoiler at the beginning. This is a satire column. This is a third in a sequence of reports. I put the word in quotes, reports.
Right.
Of a secret tape of a secret meeting that has been furnished to me by a secret source, in which I give the verbatim conversation of the people who really run California behind the scenes. And as I envision it, the group, and who's to say this isn't so, the group includes a number of environmentalists. It includes, let me see here, I have the full list. The group is 10 environmentalists, 3 teachers, 2 bond underwriters, 8 plaintiffs' attorneys, 6 professionally certified lunatics, the CEO of a candle company, 231 union leaders, and 1 California business leader calling in from his home in Toronto. That's who's running California behind the scenes. And they are looking at this terrible situation with tents everywhere, on the college campuses, on the sidewalks, on the streets, on the freeways. And they come to the conclusion that what's needed is a union contract. You cannot have these walls on the college campuses of plywood and pallets hammered together by just anyone. It has to be hammered together by a skilled and trained workforce. That's the carpenter's contract. So this is how they're approaching, in this secret meeting, this is how they're approaching the tents crisis. They're going to fix it that way. And also, they've decided that people can't just camp on the sidewalk wherever they want to. They have to have a camping reservation system. So they're going to do that. And they have a few other ideas. The last time these people met in this series of columns which are satires. The last time they met, they were dealing with the fact that electric car sales are declining, and they decided, well, they have to mitigate the climate impact of that, and they settled on constructing roller derby lanes so people can skate on the curb lane on major arteries throughout California. So there you go. That's who runs California. This is just a sample of the kind of wisdom that we have from our legislature and the rest of our government.
You may have written it as a satire column, but as my experience with this stuff goes, it rings so truthful of how our government, not only in California, local level, the District of Criminals, everywhere else. Your column rings more true of how things have run in the past 2 or 3 or 4 decades. And people ask, well, how do we get into this? If you really take that and say, if this stuff is really happening or somewhat like this is how we're getting there, Susan.
Well, it's true. The people who are in the legislature are run by special interest groups. It takes a lot of money to run for office in California, and special interest groups have a lot of money, and they elect people. And so all of our elections are kind of a war between these special interests and those special interests. The ones that have the most money and the most people to go knock on doors are the public employee unions, and the other unions that get publicly funded contracts. Like, for instance, the building trades unions, they're not technically public employees, but when they go and build these so-called affordable housing projects that are entirely funded with government money, the taxpayers have to pay the prevailing wage, which means the highest union wage you can find anywhere on the planet Earth, practically. And that's what we have to pay for each and every laborer who works on these projects, which makes them twice as expensive as they otherwise would be. And you don't get very much for your billions and billions of tax dollars that you're spending on homelessness to try and mitigate these problems. Everything winds up being just a giant jobs program for people who support certain politicians. And, the people who are on the streets are suffering, and that's no joke.
Yes, we're the ones that are suffering because this whole thing is the government's becoming the controller of everything. The latest is the insurance industry. This started with workman's comp and earthquake insurance, and you couldn't get it, and the state stepped in, and then pretty soon they're running that whole program. Now with practically all the major insurance companies are either bailing or planning to bail out of California, and they've already started if you can't get insurance, you can do it by the state of California. Pretty soon, everything, insurance, everything will be run by the state of California. This is, sometimes I wonder why we even try it to things the way things are going. And like I say, your columns may be satire, but there's another thing that's running. They've run this stuff clear into the ground, Susan.
They have. And what hurts the most to watch is how the cost of living is going up. The jobs are going down. A lot of industries that have high-paying jobs are being driven out of the state by high taxes, high payroll costs, high everything else. And so they are leaving the state. And that leaves people in California with fewer job options. And they can't make enough money to live here because we're driving up the cost of living with our policies. So the government rides in on its white horse, so to speak, and it says, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to force businesses to raise the minimum wage. So they pass legislation that raises the minimum wage in fast food restaurants. And they pass legislation that raises the minimum wage for people who work in healthcare facilities. Not just healthcare providers, but everybody who works in the building, the people who come in and fill the vending machines. Everybody's going to get $25 an hour. This winds up raising the cost of living even further, and people get laid off because there isn't enough business at these fast food restaurants or even in these healthcare facilities. People end up getting laid off because the costs are too high. And how does that help? That's not the solution. The solution is to cut taxes and cut regulations so that businesses can operate profitably and hire more people, so that people can buy homes without all of these extra costs for development fees and the rest that add $100,000 to a house before you even put a shovel in the ground to build it. We have to do something about this over-government mandate that we have. It's just everything's a government mandate, and everything is making everything more expensive. And that is hurting the people it's supposed to be helping.
No, I never thought I'd live long enough that fast food would become a luxury. But they've been doing a lot of reports here lately of that. And over the past, just before COVID, practically fast food has doubled in less than 5 years. And the latest, especially in California, with them going up to $20 an hour. And the case is just like they were making the case with the, the whole, do you want a dead daughter or a living son case, and trying to justify their whole transgender thing or whatever they're doing. There's the whole thing. Oh, the $20 minimum wage for fast food workers is not going to raise prices at your fast food restaurant. Sometimes I wonder, they really must think we're that dumb, that we don't recognize that Big Mac that cost us $2 or that Chick-fil-A sandwich that was $3 is now $5 and $6, and we can't even afford to go there like we used to. Now it's like going to a fine restaurant to go to your local franchise, In-N-Out place, Susan.
It is, and on top of it, we have the highest state sales tax in the whole country. So you add minimum 7.25% to whatever you just ordered in the drive-through, and more in most cities because they've added local taxes on top of that, and it just becomes wildly unaffordable. And what are we doing? We're hurting these small business owners who are the franchise owners. They're not big corporations; they're small business owners, and we're hurting them. We're hurting the people they hire. We're hurting the consumers, and yet that's how Sacramento views its role, to mandate that everybody has to pay more if they have more and get more if they have less. And I think that was tried, if I'm not mistaken, in the 20th century, and it failed rather spectacularly in a number of countries.
Well, 100%. I mean, it's failed across human recorded history every time we've tried. Anytime anyone has ever tried it, it winds up being an abject failure and people starving to death over this stuff. How we keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again is mind-boggling. We got about a minute left. Tell them why they should join HJTA Go.
The Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is the best organization in California. It's the organization that brought you Proposition 13 to keep your property taxes under control, and it protects Prop 13. It protects taxpayers in the courts, in the legislature, on the ballot. Join the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and strengthen the voice of taxpayers in California. We can fix these problems if we all work together.
Yes, we can. Thanks for being on, Susan. We'll do it again next week.
Thank you, Roy.
You got it. Susan Shelley, Vice President of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and columnist extraordinaire for the Southern California News Group. And wow, sometimes of the stuff we seem to get ourselves into these messes all the time. Again, the whole latest one, AB 1955. It's out of the assembly. Call your state senators. Little Dickie Roth here. Well, Rosalia Bowe is going to vote against it, but Dickie Roth is going to support it most likely. And he's going to be it's either going to be him or Jose Medina is going to be your newest county, Riverside County Board of Supervisor. Get on these guys' cases. It's time to stop and call your school. Call them and tell them, this is one time we agree with Newsom. Take the money away from the schools. They've done nothing but blown it. They're producing less product. They're making your kids stupider. And if you think I'm saying it, go ask the U.S. military. Their tests prove kids ain't got it. And that doesn't bode well on a lot of fronts. Maya caramba. Maybe we'll get into the Mexico thing. Their election is Sunday, and they're going to elect another cartel roller. I guess, our Fisher's got to get that cocaine.
I've been talking about standing up for our country, doing something.
These big box stores stayed open while the little guys closed. Will our voices be heard? Does voting with our dollars work? PatriotSwitch.com gives patriots the power to walk away from the big box stores forever. Stop supporting the enemies of freedom now. That's why PatriotSwitch.com was created, for those who support America. PatriotSwitch.com. Is your car doing the hucklebuck and afraid you will be stuck? Well, head on down to Toyota of San Bernardino, Nissan of San Bernardino, Subaru of San Bernardino, and the San Bernardino Auto Mall, and catch a Camry, look ravishing in a Rogue, or be styling in a Subaru. Don't forget I-10 Toyota in Indio for those of you in the lower desert. You deserve to be the happiest human on the planet. So head on down to one of these 4 great dealerships for the car of your dreams. Spread the word. IE Newswire is now on every Monday through Friday, live at 5 p.m. on Rumble and KMET 1490 AM, 5:30 to 6 p.m. Join all the cool kids who want an eclectic look at the news without all the filters of the evil scoundrels of social media and the despicable dorks of the dominant press. Don't bumble and stumble. Subscribe to IE Newswire on Rumble and roll with the best hillbilly hoedown around. That's it. If you want to buy American, go to PatriotSwitch.com. If you need a new Subaru or Toyota, go to one of Cliff Cummings' great dealerships at the San Bernardino Auto Mall at the 10 and 215 freeways. Don't forget I-10. Toyota down in the lower desert. You wanted a contrarian. You want your life to be better? Just do the opposite of what most of these politicians, like a Jesus Holguin, who's wrecked Moreno Valley Unified for 22 years. If he's saying do something, do exactly the opposite. 98.7% of the time, you'll be right. Gavin Newsom, Joe Biden, Rivas, all of them, the whole lot. Josh Newman, who you heard trying to cut off the guy that was telling him, hey, you're bogus. Quit BSing the people. And they cut off his mic. Like they did to Saley and everyone else. It's telling them the truth. But K9 Corey Jackson, they'll keep you there till 1 o'clock in the morning. Another for today. As we usually say at this time, mandatory, you're back here in 22 and a half hours live to hear the best darn show in the whole wide world. Until then, see ya!
Oh, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
You got it.
Bye.